We're recording.
All right, welcome Purple Team to another monthly book study. This month we read Finding the Mother Tree, Discovering the Wisdom of the Forest by Suzanne Simard. She's a biologist, ecologist, and did a lot of master's studies and PhD studies and dissertations on how trees communicate. I sent out a link to the TED Talk, which is kind of one half of the book. It's interesting. One half is explaining her research. The other half is kind of a memoir of her personal life through it, which I thought was a good tie-in with finding the mother tree, as in, you know, this mothering tree, but then also finding her spot as, you know, getting married, and becoming a mother, and the life.
And her mother and her grandmother and all
Yeah.
of that.
So it was a very interesting book. To me, it was a slow burn. Like it was hard. It took a while to kind of get into in relation to the other books, which is, dives right in with facts and interesting tidbits and stuff. And this one's more of a more of the slow, long-term conversations.
Which I wonder if that was kind of intentional, because it kind of gets at the point of how the trees operate in the relationships. You know, at first I was like, why? You know, it seemed kind of weird at first that she would talk about tree and in the same paragraph say something about her relationship with her friends or her family. And then I started to think, well, that actually overall kind of makes sense, because she's talking about the relationships of the trees, and it seems like she's kind of making a parallel.
Yeah, at first I was like, why are we reading about the dog in the outhouse? What does that have to do with
What
trees?
does that have to do with this, right?
And it did. I mean, it
Yeah.
was beautifully woven together, I think. And it was a great story. I mean, that's what I like about the memoir stuff, is it's well-written memoir. It's a well-written story.
Yeah.
In a way that most memoirs aren't scientific. I mean, it's both ends.
Yeah.
Well, and there's like these, you know, just these interesting tidbits of what it's like to, you know, be chased back into a car, and then all of a sudden, like, lose she couldn't get the car started or something, and, you know, just all these little things that, you know, you don't like think about, but it's like, oh yeah, all these small minutiae of day-to-day life of things that can go wrong.
Yeah.
You know.
And the kind of the way that I saw a parallel, I don't know if she meant to do a parallel, but all these bad things, right? The things that are killing the trees, right? The little bugs that are killing the trees, and climate change and bears and all these dangerous things. I saw a parallel with, you know, the Forest Service guys, and, you know, these people who were very clearly out to get her. And kind of the enemies of what she was up to, right? And the ones who were trying to threaten her, and literally threaten her.
Yeah. Well, with you know, malicious intent, or just the, you know, nature of, you know, stuff happens, and, you know, right, with her cancer and going through that, it's like, put that on her, but it's still a thing she had to overcome.
Yeah, the drama of the story, I think, was well written.
Yeah, there was a lot of those. I was like, well, why is she putting all this information in here? Right, about like, oh, she didn't wear her mask properly. Oh, and it's like, who cares? And then you find out later, it's like, oh, like, it's because this is probably what caused, you know, her breast cancers.
See, I didn't get to that part. I'm on chapter 8 still, so I haven't.
I mean, she doesn't die,
Spoilers.
obviously. She's still she's still alive.
That's good. She is still alive?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all I need
Because
to
she
know.
wrote a book.
She wrote a book in 2021, and in the back of the book it says that she is currently a professor at the University of British Columbia's Faculty of Forestry. I literally, like during that section, I was like, did she make it? I like looked back to make sure that it doesn't say past tense. So I'm sure.
Not
Well,
published posthumously. or
Right,
something.
right.
and the book takes place over, I think, 25 years,
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, at least, I mean, if you think about,
if not 30.
yeah, I mean,
Right.
the little one with her, when she was a little bitty, right? When she was like from her childhood.
Oh, right,
And
yeah.
kind of even telling about
Well, when
her grandparents before that, so.
I mean,
yeah.
even when she
Yeah.
started her research.
Right,
I mean, because she did
Right,
these,
as a young,
yeah, so she started these plots of 80 trees, and they're still out there, and it's, I think, from the TED Talk, I don't know when she did the TED Talk, but she talks about it in the book,
Yeah,
so it was probably 2017 is when she did the TED Talk.
yeah,
It was 30 years before, so that makes sense.
right.
What is that? 87?
87, yeah, because
So
it
That's
was
about right,
early 80s, wasn't it, when she started,
I think so.
when she was an undergrad and she
Yeah.
was working during the summers or something?
Yeah,
The beginning
right,
of
yeah,
that.
because at first,
Yeah.
at the beginning of the book, she's working for the forestry,
Mhm.
Right.
and then she feels like this is something's
Well, yeah.
wrong, something's amiss.
Or, I mean, and even they kind of pushed her out. They said, well, you're not gonna keep your job, start looking. right,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah.
You created too much. Yeah, and when I watched the TED Talk, all I could think about was the fact that she says in the book, she says something about, I'm glad my friend told me to wear the black blazer because we realized later that I had a button missing on my blue blouse. And so the whole time I was like, that's the blue blouse. That's right there. She's wearing the blue blouse.
She's wearing the blue blouse.
That's right. Yeah, it's somewhere in there, 2017. So there's, yeah, toward the end of, closer to when she wrote the book then.
You know, what is the growth cycle? 50 to 100 years or something like that of trees? That's still a pretty short time, and
Yeah, and I think the whole total growth circle is less important than long enough to know. I mean, it seemed like early on, they were saying
Yeah.
about her research that, oh, it's not long enough, right? You have to show over a period of time,
Yes.
right? And so it
Right.
won't necessarily be a period of the whole tree, but it has to be a period of so on.
Yeah.
What kind of patience does it take to do that research that takes 20, 30, 35, 40 years and still going on?
Yeah.
Well, there was,
still so much more of a long view than the Forest Service or the decision makers, the policy makers who
Right.
are saying, you know, they're just looking at from the road, like she said, and, you know, seeing the alders that are out there and thinking, oh, well, they're blocking the light, they're taking the resources, they need to go, but not seeing the long view of
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
well, it's a very, I understand the frustration of, okay, the policymakers go, well, show me the facts. Well, I'm working on the facts. Oh, you just don't have
You
them.
don't have them,
And
right?
then so
Right.
you're like, okay, well, fine, here's my findings. And then other people are like, well, you haven't done long enough research. It's like, well, what do you want from me?
Right.
You know,
Right,
like,
yeah.
it's like, you know,
But you're right, Chuck. I mean, she was in it for the long haul, right? I mean, she basically turned this into her life's pursuit.
well, she had to do it before the snow came, and then the snow came and she didn't get it, right? There's a part where she didn't get enough research or something.
Right.
She like, and then nonchalantly, just, matter of fact, so we waited another year.
Right, right.
And it's like, yeah, you just waited an entire year to get the cycle back again
Yeah.
in the fall when everything can melt. Man,
When she discovers this relationship between plants and that say the lowest part of the creation as far as living parts, what's that say to us as humans, supposed to be the highest part of the evolutionary creation? What's our relationships look like? How well are we relating to other cultures and clients and religions?
yeah.
As
Well, it always,
sad, we'd be better off as a tree.
well, and it brings up when Jesus says, what you do to the least of these, right? And we always think of people, but it's like, are there things less than that, right? Is he meaning nature, is eating the trees, the fungus,
Right.
The microorganisms.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I translate when, I mean, it doesn't just say God so loved for God so loved the people. It doesn't say for God so loved the community. It doesn't say for God so loved, the city. It said for God so loved the cosmos. I mean, not even the planet, but this just all of creation. And that's part of what Christ's presence on earth. Jesus came to earth because of this cosmic love. So
And it's a much deeper interpretation, because it's always interesting. I grew up, God so loved the world, but that wasn't ever taught to me.
right,
What was
right.
taught about world is we're not of this world. We should not live like the world lives.
Right,
Right.
right.
And there's a very different mindset into knowing, okay, what is the world that God loves and what is the world that God abhors?
right. Well, yeah, and I was taught to go the opposite direction with that passage. For God so loved, insert your name here. Do you guys remember that from Sunday school?
Yes.
Yeah.
That for God so loved Matthew enough, right? Which is not inappropriate, which is not incorrect. But I don't remember being taught as well the other side, right? And we think about the planet as the world, but then we kind of simplify it. But we don't have to change the language to say it also says cosmos. It also says as big as you can imagine.
And yeah, because that's the first step of the meditation I've heard. You start with yourself, and then you go to the people you love the most, and then acquaintances, and then the world, and then you go to the people you hate.
Right.
And you end with for God so loved,
Right.
Democrats, Republicans.
Right.
Well,
Well, and I think, Chuck, this is maybe part of the point that you're making too, is that the trees seem to have learned cooperation better than the rest of us, better than humanity for sure, in terms of how, which is I think part of the point she was saying was the reason the Forestry Service guys didn't know the way this worked is because they were so bent toward competition and a competition mindset that they didn't understand that the way this stuff works is all cooperation. Meanwhile, if they had learned that, then there would be a very different way that they interacted with each other. And I think that's, which again has Jesus written all over it. I mean, this is exactly what Jesus has tried to tell us over and over again, before the tree book.
Yeah, it reminds, are you familiar with Temple Grandin? Anyone?
Uh-oh.
Chuck, do you know who Temple Grandin is?
No,
I don't remember who they are.
Maybe, I don't know if you have a book or not. You will put that on the list.
Okay.
She was, or she is, she's so she's an autistic, I think she's a savant, but she's just, very autistic. So she doesn't, she's very sensitive to outside touch and sound, I think, and color and sight. So she couldn't hug, she didn't like hugs. And so she saw the cattle machines that close, or shot syringes. And so she built her own hugging machine, and then it progresses. And so she studies like the way cows move and herds move as a group, not just as a person, but they move as a herd. And so she developed at slaughterhouses. She's like, well, they're gonna get slaughtered anyway. I might as well, give them a nicer life. Because you realize, they're being scared as they go through this. So she made this whole contraption and process of how they can be calm through it. And of course, she sets it up, and then people bypass it, and then, cows drown, and then they're getting mad at her. And it's like, well, no, because you didn't use my.
You messed it up.
You didn't use it right.
Right. Yeah.
And I think it's that same thing of like,
that's right.
well, no, this is just how we've always done it. So anything else is wrong, and you're just stupid.
Right. It's
No, I do it better.
The defensiveness, you could tell the defensiveness from the forestry guys, for sure.
Right. Especially the lead policymaker guy who is, I can't remember.
Oh,
what
the
his name
Reverend.
was. The Reverend.
The Reverend.
The Reverend.
Yes.
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 Holding court.
Yeah.
Like it could be no other way than the way they said it, because we.
Right,
But I think she was very gracious to them
yeah,
in her writing.
Yeah.
Like, to me, it seemed very objective of, here's what they said. It wasn't like, and those, SOBs and those,
right,
jerks and stuff. It's like, no, she just explained what they did and she's explained how she felt. She felt frustrated, but
yeah,
she was very, I thought, kind to them, and realizing that we all are that way
uh-huh,
to some extent, right? Like,
right,
it's easy to vilify them because we kind of have this background idea, like, yeah, she's right, of course, because she wrote a book,
yeah,
but she's very like, knows that we all have that same mindset of trying to protect what we've always done, because we don't want to feel like an idiot that some new person comes on and can do it better.
right, yeah. No, I think she was aware that they were kind of trapped in the system too. And this is what they've done, and this is what they've always done. They don't know better. Now, they also had some culpability and could have stepped outside of that system, which she named. And even named herself as saying, I should have been more forceful at times. I should not have, taken a step back or let them talk me out of it, or retreated into my kind of introvert hiding state. But you're right. I think she could have been a lot more, painted these demons, but.
Well, she could have easily just blamed it all on them. It wasn't my fault. They, she, like, as you said, she still took responsibility for the things she could have done better.
Well, and when she did lean toward vilifying them a little bit, she kind of did it through Barb, I think it was.
Oh,
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
she said, and Barb said this.
That's right.
You know?
Yeah, which is, that's good. That's brilliant, Mary.
Yeah.
We all need
It
it
is.
more.
Yeah.
Barb.
So, yeah, it did take me a while to kind of understand how her experiments worked, and I'm like, I still don't understand what you did, but
Yeah, right.
I understood what you got, and
Right.
the response and the results, so I'm like, yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, eventually I found myself kind of skimming the page and a half of very detailed experiment process. And I'm like, all right, just get to what you found. Because that more or less all the experiments were kind of the same. By the end of the book, they're like, all right, we're gonna somehow test between this plant and this plant how they talk to each other, right? And so
Yeah.
Well, and of course, I did the audiobook thing, so I didn't have.
oh right,
no
yeah, I
picture.
couldn't skip
But it's
it.
like, or like, did they have pictures of how her diagrams of how the experiments worked?
No, they did not have
I didn't see
diagrams.
diagrams.
Some
That
diagrams
actually
would have been
Because
nice.
that's
exactly
what
right.
I could have read it, and I'm like, oh yeah, I got it exactly what you're doing.
I really appreciated the TED Talk, the diagrams
I
in the
think,
TED Talk.
yeah, I saw the TED Talk.
But yeah, they did not have, are these the same pictures that you guys had?
I think that was.
Did you all do the audio book or did you all do the hard copy, McPeters?
We did the hard copy.
Copy?
Very nice, well done.
I would have liked a picture of the device, whatever it was called, the bomb thing. with
Oh,
the
right.
neutron.
Yes.
With the way she described that.
She didn't have any of
Visualize
the
how that works.
specifics of the, like there's all the pictures of like the different fungi or
Oh,
the
yeah.
trees or, a lot of pictures of mother trees.
Yeah, I would have liked that too.
And then pictures of family, which I thought was cool
Mhm,
too. I really
mhm.
appreciated that. But not a lot of, scientific diagrams or
Yeah.
anything like that. There was more of that in the TED Talk, actually.
Yeah.
She showed a few pictures of that in the
Oh,
TED
okay.
Talk.
Yeah, I liked the TED Talk. It really summarized pretty quickly
Mhm.
what it took
Yeah.
me hours to read.
Right, I know.
Matthew,
And is that the Cliff Notes version?
Yeah, it took her 30 years to do.
Yeah,
All
right, right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you could get the science just as well, I think, for the TED Talk. Now, I do think
Okay.
the memoir stuff really added to it. I really appreciate being able
Yeah.
to read the whole thing.
Yeah.
But And here she is in a tree. Did you get that one? Picture of her in a tree.
Oh, that's very nice.
That was early on, wasn't it? I didn't get color.
Well,
I
see,
got
that's
black
the other
and
thing
white.
is,
Oh,
you
really?
know,
Yes, so I'll have to look at
we
the
hear,
book.
we hear forests. We really, in Kansas, don't know what a forest
Yeah,
is.
Right, right.
Right
Right, and it's
about
like, you
that.
see the trees that she's actually talking about, and they're like, you know,
Right,
10 feet in diameter and,
That's right.
you know, hundreds of feet
right,
tall,
right,
and
right. Or at least 10 feet.
it's not these, well, then for the mother trees, right, her sample stuff.
Yeah, right.
Right, are just planted, but,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time thinking about, a couple summers ago when we were in Oregon and in Washington, and, that's what we're talking about,
Really
right?
get
We're talking about that
sense
more
of
than
it.
we
Mhm.
are, Clinton Lake trails.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a different world for sure. But I'm sure you could go out to Clinton and find the same science.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm
Similar
sure it's-
ecosystem
Right,
exists probably, yeah.
Yeah, it does bring up an interesting like conundrum or thought experiment when, she's talking about, well, everything's connected. It's like, well, then how do you make a decision? Right? If
Mm.
everything is connected, where do you, she talked like this goes against how, I was taught to be a scientist where you isolate as much as you can. And like, yeah, that makes sense, but then you're missing something. So how, like, where do you draw that kind of,
Right.
that circle of, all right, this is all the information I'm gonna be able to use,
Mhm.
because I have to make a decision, I have to take action, right? Whether it's, buying a new car, or, how much do I pay for groceries, to, activism and,
Yeah,
and,
Yeah, you can
justice
get paralyzed if
ministry and
you-
stuff. It's like, I need to know more research, because it's all connected. I don't want to make the wrong hasty mistake, but, it's always, it does
There's
bring up
always
that.
more to find out.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say, Susan?
I don't remember.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, I think you're right, though. The question that comes to mind is, at what point is it helpful to think in relationship and community? And what level do you get to the board, right?
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Where there is no individuality, there is no,
Assimilated.
yeah, we're all assimilated into this big thing.
Uh-huh.
We don't have any say in it, or we don't have any personality. Right. And I don't think she was necessarily given maybe she was given a value statement by the end of it, to say that we need to see things in more connective ways. We need to see things in more relational ways.
Yeah. Well, and it's also like, beware of the contradictory. Like if I saw a root and it had fungus on it, I would think it was diseased.
Right.
And really, fungus needed to be there
Right.
in order for it to survive.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
That is completely bizarre to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
Which is your assumptions.
I wanted to share another book that I've been reading. I think I've told some of you at some point that I love these field guides. Daniel Matthews has written a couple of these field guides. One for the Rockies, and then this one for Cascade Olympic Natural History. So it's kind of all the Cascades, and kind of where Daniel is in Oregon and such. And so I'm reading along in here, and he talks about the same stuff, and he talks about the connection between the fungi, basically are connecting all of this, and then says, well, a typical barter is carbohydrates from the plant in return for water and minerals from the fungus. Other exchanges are common. During dry seasons, the water flow is likely to reverse, with deep-rooted trees supplying most of the network's water. Small plants can receive carbohydrates from overstory plants via shared fungal partners. Then he says, Suzanne Simard measured transfer of carbohydrates to Douglas fir seedlings from birches above them. The nature increased when the seedlings were made needier by shading them. Trees, of course, switch from receiving the donated carbohydrates once they're big enough, but non-green plants stay on welfare lifelong. And so I'm like, oh, I know all about that. I know that story. So,
I'm reading that.
Yeah.
but he talks about the difference between, more than she does, about the different kinds of fungus. So there's the mycorrhizal,
Uh-huh.
is that right? Is that how you
Yeah.
say it?
Yeah.
Mycorrhizal, and then the lichenized, which basically are these kind of little farming, like the lichen, right, is kind of a little farm of fungus. And then the saprophytic, which is the stuff that decomposes, the fungus that decomposes stuff. And then the parasitic. And the parasitic, she talked about some because she was, all the Forest Service guys were just like, well, fungus is a fungus, right?
Right.
And if you see a fungus, it's bad, you should spray Roundup on it and kill it. But her point was that, well, some of it is bad and destroys the plant, but some of it's exactly what it needs. Yeah.
Well, just like our bodies,
Yeah.
so we need some bacterial.
Bacterial, right.
There's good bacteria and bad bacteria.
Yeah. What was that?
Oh,
Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead, read that.
so I saw a documentary about the largest animals on Earth, or organisms on Earth. It's like, oh yeah, here's the blue whale, and here's the elephant, and here was this dinosaur. And then it talks about the parasitic, this says it's highly destructive honey fungus, Emeria solidipes, in the Malheur National Forest in Eastern Oregon, 2,200 acres, and it's estimated to be 2,400 years old.
Yeah.
And I think there was there's similar ones all over the world, but I think it's a similar thing where everything connects to the trees and the plants
Right.
are all connected, sharing information.
Wow.
Yeah, he writes about that too. He talks about, I'm not gonna find it, just flipping through here. But he talks about what's the biggest organism on the planet. And he also talks about trees, talks about aspens, that basically aspens are all, like you see a grove of aspens, it's one organism. They're all connected. They're not separate. And so they're all like, this inner,
Yeah.
and so that's considered an organism. And so once upon a time they thought, well, that was the biggest organism, but then they started measuring some of these fungal spreads and realized, there's no way you can compare it to some of that. So,
Right, and you don't see it because it's underground, you don't even know it's
Yeah,
there
right,
necessarily.
right.
It's incredible.
right.
Yeah.
And this is within the last 30, 40 years, we're figuring this stuff out. What are we gonna figure out in the next 30 to 40 years? I mean, I think this is,
So this book that we read a couple months ago, Are We Smart Enough to Know How Smart? It should be called, Are We Smart Enough to Know How Smart Fungus Is?
yes, yes. This same guy talks about the fact that more and more scientists are starting to talk about plants as slow animals, rather than say, and the animal book did a good job saying it's not necessarily this hierarchy that we've made it out to be.
Yeah.
And they make the point, or he makes the point, and as is Simard, right, that these trees are talking to each other, and these trees are communicating and, nurturing each other, and absolutely are caring for each other.
They tell them
I'll give
that
you
there's a
this.
beetle outbreak over
Yes,
here and
yes,
get ready.
right,
Like, well, that's nuts.
That's right.
It's nuts.
that's right. Well, and how quickly.
I mean, they have last words. Like, here's my last words.
Yes.
To you. I'm gonna pass it all on.
Right,
So
right. Which, I mean, I think is a I think it's a beautifully holy thing. I mean, it feels
Yeah,
like this is speaking more loudly about God's creation. To say that we're just starting to figure this out, but God knew this was the way this works. I mean, this is by design. She doesn't say any of that, but I choose to believe that's part of the way God created the world.
Yeah.
Well, and that leads me to ask the question too, when we think we're helping things and really we're kind of just screwing things up,
Right.
Yeah.
I remember at the very beginning, she was talking about how the forest will heal itself,
Yeah.
without us involved
Right.
at all.
Right.
Is the forest improved by us trying to help?
Uh-huh.
Or is it improved by us just saying,
Yeah,
getting
and
out of the way and
she
letting
addresses
it
that
fit
in the TED Talk. She said something like, well, what can we do right in her life, last steps? And it's like, first one was like, go into a forest.
Yeah, right, right.
But I think one of the last ones is like, provide the forest tools that it can repair itself. Which, right, it does fit that. It's like, okay, give them the agency to fix, because they know what's best, which, you know, is what we've been hearing for, you know, during Black Lives Matter. It's, you know, it's like, no, you're not fixing, you need to give us the tools
Yeah.
for
And then get out of
us
the way.
and then get it, and then,
Yeah. Which, I mean, I feel like this has been one of the more hopeful books that we've read. I mean, a lot of the books that we've read, it's like, well, we've screwed it up and there's no chance going back.
Yeah.
But, you know, her point is, yeah, we screwed it up. And they may get worse. But if we start to learn more, some of this stuff can fix itself if we can learn how to get out of the way.
yeah, we've talked a lot about oil, which takes, you know, it's a non-renewable. Finally, we're talking about trees, which, I mean, we think 50 years is a long time, but
Right.
compared to, you know, other stuff,
That's right.
it's pretty quick.
Well, yeah, she didn't say in the book, but she said in the TED Talk, right? That the highest percentage of deforestation was not in the Amazon, but it was in Canada, which is striking.
That is.
That there's, you know, so much that continues. And I also appreciate that she's not saying, well, we should just leave the forest, never build in the forest, never cut down a tree again, never,
Right.
you know, there should be no logging industry. I mean, she doesn't say any of that, right? I mean,
Yeah.
she's- She basically, from the beginning, was trying to help the logging industry do it better. They just wouldn't let her,
Yeah.
they wouldn't hear of it. But understood that this is something that's what she grew up in. This was her.
And it was sustainable and.
That's right,
you know,
right.
Kept it going.
Yeah, it is interesting driving through Pacific Northwest and seeing some of those clear cut stands.
Yeah.
It's very striking.
Mhm.
You know, each
Yeah,
one
from a
is-
distance,
Yeah,
it looks really strange because it's just like,
right.
I didn't know what it was the first time I saw it. You know. Oh, yeah.
Right.
Well, okay, so I don't know that this was covered in the book because she was talking about forests, but it made me wonder about the lone tree, you know, that you see up that's windblown and, you know, just like on a cliff someplace,
Right.
just all by itself. How
Right,
does that
right.
poor little
Right,
creature?
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
so what would she do if she came to Kansas, right?
Right?
I mean,
I'd
it's
like
one,
to hear
And
that.
it's
she's
one
a
thing to
single
hear about the
cottonwood.
woods, right?
Uh-huh.
But when the mother tree is the only tree in the county,
Uh-huh.
right? I mean,
Yeah,
you know,
Right.
uh,
How does that tree?
Right,
Um,
right. Well, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you answer that?
That's probably beyond the book. That's.
Well,
off
yeah, I mean, I
topic,
think part of the
I
answer would
wonder-
be is that it is connected. I mean, I think, okay, here's a connection that I would make. Have you heard about the de-lawning movement?
Not
Anybody heard about
officially.
this?
No.
McFeeters, have you heard about the de-lawning movement?
Oh, not me.
So, and I think I'm using the right phrase.
Similar to xeriscaping?
Yes,
Oh.
yes, and so, same kind of idea that, that basically we have kind of bought into this idea of a, you know, perfectly manicured, you know, Kentucky bluegrass lawn, and we've kind of put that into places where that simply is not native, right? I mean, Phoenix, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
exactly what I
I
was
mean, you
just
think about the
saying.
whole desert Southwest. You create this idea of we're gonna have these beautifully manicured green lawns in a desert.
Right?
And so how much water does that take? How much
How much energy?
fertilizer does it take? I mean, she talked about the Roundup and stuff. It's like what you're doing with Roundup, and not just Roundup, but any fertilizer, when you're doing that is you're trying to kill the native stuff so that you can grow this other thing,
This,
right?
Yeah.
And
Scottsdale golf course.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. how much
Yeah,
energy
Palm
does
Springs.
that take?
Yeah, exactly. And so the de-lawning movement suggests being more intentional planting native things in your yard. And so instead of a lawn, instead of a manicured thing with non-native grasses, what are things that you could plant instead? that are.
Dandelions.
Yeah. On clover and dandelions and henbit.
Oh, yeah.
What's that?
Natural, they'll just don't have to mow them or do anything, just have a real,
Well, I heard that people cut their grass too short, that like the kind of, the idea of the perfect lawn is actually too short where the grass, right, because the blade has stoma or stomata, right, which receives the air and sunlight. If you cut off your leaves, you don't have enough, so it's, you're actually starving the grass if you cut it too short.
Right.
'Cause it
Well, and
actually
they
can't
say that
support itself.
they say that the grass will go deep as high as it is. And so if you cut it really short, then you got really short roots. And so it makes it even tougher. And so what do you do then? You got to come back through with more,
Fertilizer or?
weed and feed and all that kind of stuff. And so, so I don't know. I mean, I think it's at least related to saying, okay, what is native in Kansas prairie? Probably not Kentucky bluegrass, right?
Probably not. But the tall grass, the tall grass prairie.
Right,
that-
that's right.
The
beautiful.
oh, yeah, well, those, I'm sure those are all connected, because
Yeah,
they don't have, I don't think if I remember right, they don't have, I mean, they have one tap root that goes down,
Uh-huh.
but most of it is
Yeah,
a
yeah,
spread out
Maps, right?
Right.
It's-
system.
Yeah.
yeah. I thought about that today when I was reading this book and I looked over, because we've got a lot of native grasses in kind of a clump right by our front door. And, every year I'm doing something where I'm working on the lawn and I'm doing the fertilizer. I'm trying to do less fertilizer actually last couple of years, but I'm trying to do something to make the lawn look good. And I look over at these grasses and I've not touched them in 13 years. And they grow, 8 feet tall. And I don't do anything with them, and they come back every year. They come back higher and fuller and thicker every year. And meanwhile, what I'm trying to do is, dig out the little bit of dandelion and do all that kind of little stuff. It's like, I mean, I don't know about necessarily letting the dandelions and the henbit take over. But it is an interesting question.
It's a good thought.
As part of what we're doing, like the Forestry Service guys.
When we visited Germany, they did let the dandelions grow.
Huh.
We saw lots of yards that were filled with dandelions, but I personally don't care for that.
Yeah.
But they did it. I mean, they did it. And
Right,
another
right.
thing, I planted a little bit of mint. A friend had given me a little bit of mint.
Yes.
And I didn't contain it in a pot, which was a mistake. So I was trying to pull some of that up, and you talk about roots
Uh-huh.
forever.
Right.
And
Well, and
Susan's talking about like a vine growing, or like a tree growing alone. I'm sure that root goes somewhere. We have a vine that I don't like in our rocks. And I mean, that comes from that rock every year.
right. Yep.
Getting its source from somewhere. I imagine that root runs a long way.
It's like a hackberry tree, right? I mean, you cut a hackberry tree off every year, it's just gonna keep coming back, because, it goes down to the earth's core.
It's like that through the mantle.
There's no killing that thing. And I'm still learning about the Delani thing, and I don't know much about it. My sense is it's not necessarily about dandelions as much as it would be around here about, like purple coneflower or, brown-eyed Susans or something like that. Things that are going to be pretty to look at, but not necessarily. And then,
It's like,
it's-
Yes, yeah, right.
Viney.
yeah.
But it's interesting to know, like, why do we call dandelion a weed?
Mm-hmm.
Because like the definition of weed is just an unwanted plant that's competing against
That's right.
the other stuff. Like,
Right.
And it's
It's completely
It's like
ambiguous and subjective.
Coreopsis could be a weed.
Right.
I mean, it like exponentially expands every year. It
Yes,
seems like.
yes. Well, yeah, you go to a nursery and the difference between ground cover and weeds is a very fine line, right?
Right.
I mean, ground cover is something you pay for, and weeds is something
You
you're
pay
to
to
remove, exactly.
Up in Iowa, you get dandelion wine.
Yeah, there you go.
Right.
It's out of the dandelion, the young dandelion greens, it's like spinach. So it,
Yeah. Kylie's dad grows dandelion to eat. He eats it for
Does he?
breakfast
Really
and makes tea.
interesting.
Dandelion tea.
Has he given it to you? You know, what's it taste like?
I haven't eaten it.
You haven't tried it. Okay.
I'm guessing it's somewhat like arugula,
Yeah.
Oh, it could be.
you know, it's
Yeah,
probably
better
a
like
little,
a kale.
It's
it's
kind of
probably a
taste
little
or something.
stronger
Uh-huh.
than, yeah.
When I was a little girl, my dad, he always collected greens, and that included dandelions, lamb's quarter, a lot of the things that we consider weeds. But we ate them as greens in the springtime,
Oh,
and they're good.
yeah, yeah.
I was just thinking about Phoenix. A lot of the yards is the word xeriscape.
Zero scale,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, where it's rock
Uh-huh.
and, punctuated by the occasional cacti.
Yes,
or,
right, right.
And it's beautiful.
Right.
It
Yeah.
can be very nice.
Yep, yep.
It makes a lot more sense than, like you say, trying to grow
It's a lot cheaper than.
bluegrass.
That's
Yeah.
exactly right.
Our daughter lives in Tucson, and all of her yard is rock, different kinds of rocks and so forth. And they have a lot of cactus, and she sent a beautiful picture of the cactus blooming.
Oh, that's around in March, I think, when that happens.
Well, these just happened. She said she's so surprised, but they just bloomed the other day on her
Oh.
particular cactuses.
Hmm.
you know, why the little girl took her a mushroom to the school dance?
Why, Chuck?
Such a fun guy.
Oh.
It's on the recording.
How long have you been waiting on that one, Chuck?
Well, you reminded me of it a while ago. Someone was talking about fungus and fun guy.
A good dad joke.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, go ahead, Marcia.
Well, in our book club, we read another tree book.
Hmm.
And I really, this one, I wonder exactly who she thinks her audience is. I think it would mainly be, scientific people. But this other book on trees, I liked it much better. It made the same kind of conclusions that, everything is interrelated, but it made the tree feel like your family.
I remember
So
that.
it's just, and so now it's very difficult for me when I want to prune my tree or something. Got it.
So she had me go out and saw off a limb.
It's like cutting the arm off your sister or something.
It is.
Well, and I do appreciate the scientific perspective. And I remember now you told me about that other one. I need to look that one up. That'd be good to read sometime one of these months too. But I appreciate the scientific idea of a bit of a dispassion. I mean, she uses her and mother tree and some of that language, but then she also says, yeah, but it really does, some of it does need to be gone through and need to trim some back, and some needs to be removed, and so I think there is an awareness of that, even though what was the scene near the end of the book where she had all the girls gathered together to kind of go through one of the projects, and she said, touch the bark before you do it to tell the tree thank you. And so it is with this kind of relational, even though you're going to do something that will injure or will hurt, acknowledge it first, which I thought was an interesting way, and especially the way she connects that to so much.
I really appreciated her including their daughters in that, and at the end, and What the one daughter, she will actually continue some of that research, I think. Did you get that feeling?
That's what it sounded like from the book. Now I want to Google it and see if she actually did, and kind of with the daughter, because the daughter's old enough now to do
Sharing
homework.
with her children and the next generation was really important.
Yeah. What was the other book? What were some of the insights that were different from this one, Marcia?
Well, it wasn't different. It was the very same thing about how it is all interrelated and how trees communicate with each other, and how, like the mother tree, the little saplings underneath, they're like a little family and they got siblings. And yeah, I mean, she just wrote it more in terms of like it being a family, but the same information was there. But not so much scientific detail like this lady went into.
Didn't talk about the communications of carbon and nitrogen and phosphorus, photosynthesis as much, which reminds me, or maybe makes me think back to this deal about how humans are supposed to be the highest form of the evolution. And yet our communications really, we think we talk with each other, we could write books and we can do all kinds of radio and TV. But what is the ultimate form of communication that God has us teach? Jesus taught it.
I guess it would be prayer.
Prayer, meditation, spiritual. And I think that the humans have never, and we don't really understand the spiritual connection between all of mankind, as well as between humans and man. Now, our granddaughter, in a sense, has a spiritual connection with her horses. And of course, when I was raising in 4-H, we'd have calves and things like that. You would really develop a relationship with your dog. People have real communications with their pets,
Right.
And, we took care of Nancy and Tim's dog yesterday. Milo.
Yes.
And then Raymond Schmidt, we took care of their dog.
Bella.
Bella, 2 or 3 weeks ago for 3 or 4 days. And it's amazing, the dog seems to recognize that you care for it or you don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a spiritual connection.
Right. Yeah, I thought the scene where she talked about the wolf that was following her, or she thought was following her, and then turned out was leading the way out.
Oh, wow.
I thought it was an interesting. Of course, it's hard to quantify that, right? But it's interesting to hear a scientist speak in those terms, right? What was the other book, Marcia? What was
Well,
it?
it's called Trees, and I don't remember the author, but Lynn emailed it, but I got rid of the email. I'm sorry about that.
You said that, and I forgot
Somebody
it.
sent it.
I was just, if you happen to remember it, I thought we'd put it on the recording so other folks that watched it could.
Well, the name of it is just Trees.
Okay.
But again, you have to remember, I read that several months ago.
Oh, the hidden life of trees.
Oh, there we go. The hidden life of trees.
Is that it? Is that the same one, Marcia?
I'm sorry, what?
The hidden life of trees?
I thought it was just named Trees.
Who's the author of that one?
Could be right. Lynn knows, because it was for our book club.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just the subject, the hidden life of trees.
Oh, I see.
Well, that could be it.
Who's the author?
That has to be another Google search.
Well, but it is interesting how this is a more common topic because folks are starting to understand the connection. Oh, yeah.
Peter Woollivan
Yeah.
Wohlleben.
Does that sound right, Marcia?
Well, is it a woman?
Is not Peter is the first name. I mean, I assume, I suppose.
Well, I don't know. It could be, but it does kind of sound right, but I was thinking it was written by a woman.
The hidden life of trees, what they feel, how they communicate.
Yeah, it's all about, well, it's on the same topic that she
Oh,
wrote. It's just a little different presentation, but she comes to the very same conclusion. She doesn't have all the scientific data that this lady had.
Right.
And it could be the man.
Yeah. All right, sounds like we could read a tree book a month.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them.
I'm sure there's a lot of them out there.
I would recommend this one. It talks about trees too. It's got a whole section on trees.
Put that title out, if you wouldn't mind.
This one?
Yeah,
Yeah. This
especially
is,
if it's about word.
oh,
Pacific
yes,
Northwest, that would
absolutely.
be interesting.
For those of you who are watching the video, Cascade Olympic Natural History by Daniel Matthews. It's I mean, it's not like it's a novel or anything. It's a field guide.
Field guide.
It's a field guide. It's just a bunch of, you know, but the way he writes it feels like the most entertaining field guide. Again, he's got this one and the one on the Rockies, which is kind of Canadian and Montana. That section, not Colorado Rockies.
Oh, okay. Oh, Canadian Rockies.
Yep.
Very cool.
So having been to the Botanical Garden in Phoenix and the Saguaro National Forest in Phoenix, well, in Tucson area. And then also there's a arboretum. I kind of wonder how this applies to that world, desert ecosystem, because I learned that saguaros, when they are tiny, grow up under, I think it's a mesquite tree, and it's called a nurse tree
Yeah,
because
right.
of that.
Right.
And it nourishes the saguaro until the saguaro gets big, and basically then that tree dies off.
Right.
So that would show some of that same kind of symbiosis.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. I
We're
think you
talking
just,
about
you know,
here.
pick a part of the world and
Yeah.
just change the species. I think the idea is the same, maybe a little more intentional, with a little more urgency, because she was like, we got to figure this out before we cut them all down. I mean, nobody's, you know, running out to the desert to cut things down necessarily, but you know,
Sure.
things that
Yeah.
humans do have an impact on the desert as well. So, yeah, I'd be curious too to figure out how that connects, right? What's the symbiosis between things that look pretty far away and pretty separated and disconnected, but
Well, even the bears bringing dead salmon.
right, yes,
Oh.
yep.
That, you know, rotted, decomposed, and
Yeah.
then became part of the trees.
Yeah, what they call it, the salmon forest, because it was right
Yeah.
here by the salmon run.
Oh my
And there's all
gosh.
these things are, you know,
And that's all part of that ecosystem.
yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
That's the thing, like there's all these climaxes in the book that you think the book can end here.
Right,
And it just keeps going, and there's another one.
That's
and the
right.
book can end here, and it doesn't. It
that's
keeps
right,
going.
that's right. And she just keeps getting older and older and older. It's like,
And
oh,
she-
this is.
Well, and
you
she
know,
finds more to research, and that
Yeah.
leads her to research this, and.
Yeah, yeah. Well, but I do like the kind of the idea of how we are connected in the same way that family is connected.
Yeah.
This is from the end of the book, so over in this part of Susan. But
That's all right. Yeah.
you know, the scene, the Thanksgiving scene, right? When everything, the candles fell over and the turkey caught on fire and all this.
Yeah,
kind of
that's
thing.
right, yeah.
And she talked about it, this kind of just beautiful, that's just family, right? And then of course, the next paragraph, she talks about, and that's what we're talking about. That's what the woods are. That's what the forest is, you know, just kind of this tangled mess, and from the outside, it just looks like a chaos, it looks like a disaster, but it's all just part of the way that we do the next generation.
Part of the plan. Yeah.
Right. We're pouring their wine glasses. My first thought was that. Is alcohol a good idea?
I guess wine doesn't have enough.
Doesn't have a lot of
They're not pouring their brandy in.
That's right, that's right. But I like that.
Matthew, for next time, what do you have? Are you going to do that movie on Saturday night?
So good segue. Next month, we will team it up or partner it with Sanctuary of the Cinema. So we will we'll watch the movie Noah as a Sanctuary of the Cinema event on Sunday evening,
The 20,
the 24th, I believe. And of course, we can talk or discuss afterwards, but we'll advertise it as, we'll show the movie, and then if you want a deeper dive and talk, come and meet during the normal Purple group, which will be the next Wednesday, so it would be, I think, July 27th.
Yep.
At 6:30, so we can, and then that way we can show the movie, and then we come in here and then we can record it like we normally do for the Purple group, and that way if someone doesn't necessarily want to watch the movie, they've already seen the movie and they don't need to watch it again, they can just skip that part and just come and talk about it.
right. Yeah, another thought was that, we could be more intentional with kind of ecology conversation, creation, care conversation on Wednesday. Sanctuary of the Cinema is just kind of whatever anybody wants to bring up, we'll talk about it, right? And so
Yeah.
this could be more of a, we'll be focused more on how to,
Ecological.
yeah,
focus.
right. What's God doing in this movie, in this story, in this context.
So it's directed by Darren Aronofsky. He's, I think he's a self-proclaimed atheist, but finds this beautiful poetry in the Noah story, and made his a movie about what the story of humanity as he sees it. So
Should be interesting.
Any of you ever listened to the record of Noah by Bill Cosby?
Oh, I've heard of it. I don't think I ever listened to it though. Okay, any final words?
that's all I have. Go hug a tree
Go hug a tree. All right.
Tell it thank you.
and tell it thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Marcia. Thank you, Chuck. Thank you, Matthew. Thank
Yeah.
you, Susan. See y'all next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.